Hello everybody, welcome back to another light novel review. Today I'm talking about volume number 1 in Blitz Kiva's light novel series, Pain to Win in a VRMMO. Now this one is released by J Novel Club, so currently only available in ebook format. It is told from the third person, and of course if you've read just about any other VRMMO type book, this one you will know is filled with swords and magic type action. There's quite a few different side of battles between players as well as between players and monsters. Now this story revolves mainly around main character Ichiro Tsuwabaki. He is a genius. He is wealthy. He is good looking. He thinks very highly of himself. He's approached at a gathering to celebrate his great-grandfather's birthday by his second cousin, a young girl named Asuha, who asks him if he will join a VRMMO with her and help her in the game world to accomplish a certain task. Now, Ichiro, he is a fairly self-centered character. About his one really, truly redeeming quality is that once he makes a promise, he absolutely sticks to it. Now, he's got a soft spot for Asuha. They get along very well, so he doesn't really see any reason why he shouldn't help her out, and the fact is that because he's so good at everything, he's always looking for something new to interest him and to perhaps conquer, and so he decides to join the game. Now, unlike just about any other VRMMO where we have an overpowered main character, Ichiro's status as an OP character is accomplished through what is probably one of the most controversial and hated methods for powering yourself up in even standard MMOs by today's standards, and that is through microtransactions. By using real-world money, you basically power yourself up and become OP way ahead of anybody else who's just trying to do it using the good old standard grind for no more cost than what the game costs. Ichiro does this, becomes really powerful, and ends up becoming involved in a massive quest in the game as well as trying to help Asuha with her problem. To get something out of the way right off the bat, this is not a very original book when it comes to the actual VRMMO component. At least certainly not in this first book. Of course, I don't know where the world goes from here, but in this first book, it is using very standard, usual type things that you would see in just about any MMO today. The terms of the way the quest works, even in terms of inventory management, there's nothing really all that unique about skills or magic use. Most of those things don't really go beyond the realms of pretty much any JRPG that you would play today or, World of Warcraft. So the actual world itself is not that fascinating. And after having read Infinite Dendrogram, which is another person playing a VR MMO game type story, that one I found quite the opposite, that the world itself was quite compelling. In this one, the world is not. It is not very compelling at this point. What makes this story at least somewhat interesting and fun is the characters, because they themselves, particularly Ichiro, are quite different than what you have in a lot of the other type of VR MMO type games or light novels. So Ichiro himself is probably the most key character that we need to talk about, and is pretty much the one main character that sets this book apart from a lot of the other MMO type light novels. For one thing, yes, he's OP, so he's very similar to many other characters like, say, Kirito. And I'm going to use Kirito and Sword Art as a major reference point because that is actually spoofed in this light novel a lot. There is a main character, like a key character, whose name is Kirihito. And he wears, funny, a long black cloak, uses a black sword, is one of the strongest solo players in the game. I don't need to go on. There are lots of other references. In fact, it's sort of a running gag that because of the popularity of a light novel series starring a character named Kirihito, who was trapped in a VRMMO. You see where this is going. That there are actually a ton of players in this game that have adopted the moniker of Kirihito and are dressing like the character Kirihito. It's really kind of funny because it does play a little bit with that whole fanboy aspect. So Sword Art's going to be mentioned a lot in this. But getting back to Ichiro. Now what makes him unique is his personality. When you take a character who is most often OP, like whether it be Kirito, even whether it be, the main character from Smartphone, the main character from Death March, a lot of these main characters who are overpowered generally are these easygoing, kind of humble individuals that, yes, they know they're strong, but, they don't rub it in people's faces. And, they got really strong either through, their hard work or in this case of Smartphone because of interventions of God. And then we have Ichiro, who is not modest even in the least. In fact, he considers himself pretty much the prime specimen of humanity. He says, why should I be ashamed that I'm using money to power myself up? Because money is just an extension of my genius and my powers as a human being. So therefore, money is no different than if I was a gifted gamer and I leveled up just by playing the game. And it makes for this kind of interesting character who is a little bit colder than a lot of the main characters we have. But he's incredibly confident. I mean, confident to the point where he's damn near unshakable. And even when he is somewhat challenged, he's not a character to fall apart. Like when we talk, like, say, Haruyuki in Excel World, I mean, he is filled with self-doubt. Ichiro's so different. He comes up against a challenge, he's happy, he's excited because it's now something else for him to conquer. Because he has no doubt he'll conquer it, because, God, he is the best human being that there is in the entire world, at least to his mind. And quite honestly, as far as the book goes, there's not a lot of evidence to the contrary. So we have this character who is incredibly intelligent, who is wealthy in a way that's pretty much beyond the normal person's comprehension. And he's using his wealth and his intelligence to manipulate the game into his favor, to make himself an incredibly overpowered player. And he doesn't care. He's totally fine with it. He's like, hell yeah, I'm using my money. I'm rich. Why shouldn't I use my money? I make money because I'm awesome. So why shouldn't I use money to make myself awesome in the game? Like I said, it's just this totally different take on a main character of this kind of genre. And in some ways, it's kind of refreshing. Like, I mean, he's not really an anti-hero per se, but at the same time, Ichiro only does what he wants to do. He's not a character who's altruistic. He's not going to sacrifice himself just because. And even in terms of Asuha, with her, he's kind of like, yeah, I promised to help you out, but the second we're done, you're on your own. Like, promise fulfilled, I'm out. And so it kind of like he borders on that almost villain line of things, and that kind of plays into other sort of story elements that exist within this book. Then, like I said, the other thing that makes the book fun is just its absolute shameless, spoofing of Sword Art Online, this character of Kirihito, and just in terms of the behavior and, echoing that whole beater type persona that Kirito took on in Aincrad. That's all there and poked fun at, and the whole fanboy culture and fanboys who join a game just so they can be Kirito, that is poked fun at. It is shameless in the way that it goes after Sword Art. And to me, that was a lot of fun of this as well. And it doesn't fail to sort of come into that bit of the argument of, is it right to, like, what is the right way to play a game? Is it right to use microtransactions to power yourself up? Or is it right to play the game as hard as you can to be the best gamer you can and to obtain power that way? In fact, that's sort of a central theme that plays through this. There's also the theme, and we have seen it in other books, so it's not really unique, but it certainly played out to an, okay element in this book as well. It's not like a throwaway idea, and that is this whole idea of playing the game as the person that you want to be and hoping that in some way that rubs off on you in real life. We've seen this before. In fact, again, Sword Art Online, the whole thing with Shinon, right? Shinon's whole purpose in joining Gun-Gale is to try and overcome her weaknesses, or at least her perceived weaknesses. And we see that played out in a character in Paying to Win as well. And I'm not sure if that's a direct, again, like another direct homage to Sword Art, or whether that's just sort of the whole, fitting in with this whole idea of why a person would play a game like a VRMMO. So we have a world that's very standard, that's kind of boring, to be honest. There's really not a lot of exploration in terms of what makes this game world unique, other than just, I think, what all of us would experience the first time that we could play a game where we were fully immersed in it and could almost, interact with it in terms of taste, touch, smell, and everything else. Like, we wouldn't even care whether the game was the same old MMO that we've played a million times before. The novelty is in the experience, and the novelty is in how you're now able to play the game, as opposed to what we've been doing for, the past couple decades where we're holding controllers. So I think in a way, like, that's probably a little bit more realistic if you have the world as it is in this book, where, yes, it's the gameplay itself that makes it a unique experience. It's the graphics. It's living in this world. And as I said, I think it takes a very natural look at what are people going to do if they're in this world. We have characters that are trying to manipulate things going on in the world for their own personal gain. And it's not even personal gain in terms of even power in the game or money or whatever. We have people that are just trying to make the game cool and make news happen in the game so that they can have their blog be more popular. So and I mean, even that to me is kind of like was a bit of a spoof on the whole YouTuber thing, the whole gamers community that we have on YouTube. And sometimes there's been drama in that community and, and drama between major players and everything else. And we see that played out in this as well. So there's a whole lot of different elements that go on in this book. And again, it's one of the few that we've gotten in English where it truly is just a game. I mentioned Infinite Dendrogram is one of the others. Of course, later elements of Sword Art Online are kind of similar. But again, this is very much that fitting into Infinite Dendrogram and this one as well. I know this one actually came out before Dendrogram. But this one, it is fitting into that idea of the real world is still a thing. Like, this is still a game. And so there are still players that are playing the game in terms of considerations about the real world and how they play the game or what they do in the game, how that can benefit them or translate into things in their own life in the real world. So that adds a depth and a different type of element than a lot of other type of trapped in a game world or swept, isekais that the world seems kind of game-like what we see in, say, Rising of the Shield Hero. So it is a little different because it is a pure game world that people can log out of at any time. So overall, Paying to Win in a VR MMO, it's kind of a mixed bag for me. The world itself is not incredibly original, but it does have a main character who is significantly different than a lot of the other characters that we have had who are in similar situations. It does deal with some very real themes that we are seeing play out in our gaming communities right here and right now, which certainly demonstrates the author's knowledge, I would say, of the gaming community. And I would say probably the other really standout feature of this book at this point is it's very tongue-in-cheek, let's play and poke fun at other very, very similar genres, particularly Sword Art Online, to kind of mine it for stuff that we can use to play in different ways like fanboy communities and so forth. So Pain to Win in a VR MMO, again, some elements, the world I was very disappointed in. The game mechanics weren't really anything groundbreaking, but it did have some cool characters and some other cool elements, and certainly some story ideas that, if it plays out a lot better going forward, I think they could be some really cool themes that it looks at as well. So those are my thoughts on Pain to Win in a VRMMO Volume number 1. My next book that I'm going to review is going to be Volume number 7 of The Devil is a Part-Timer. I actually have Volume 8 on my shelf because I've kind of just fallen behind on this series. So this is the short story volume, so I will be reviewing that next so I can get caught up because, like I said, I've already got the next one to read. So if you love light novels and you're brand new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe so you can check out all of my future light novel reviews, and I also do a weekly top 10 of the best-selling light novels in Japan. Thank you all for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.